Hello. How is everyone? I'm just going to wait to see if someone jumps on. So my live this morning is to talk about perimenopause and my upcoming course that starts on the 2nd of March, which is called Awakening Through Perimenopause. And I did a post on Instagram and Facebook a couple of days ago about 5 reasons why we need to prepare for perimenopause in our 40s. And I'm just going to delve a little bit deeper into that post, just to touch on why it is we need to be preparing ourselves at this time, because it's actually really, really important. And I'm seeing through many women who are almost caught out by what they're going through and how they're feeling. And we don't need to feel so alone and so almost ripped off that we have to go through this phase, which we all go through, regardless of whether we've had children, regardless of whether we identify as a different gender. If we're born female, we will all go through this. And we need to prepare for it, and we need to not look at it as so taboo. So hi Kirsty, how are you going? So I'm going to go on with now I'm going to look at a few notes as I go, so excuse that. So the post that I shared, which was 5 reasons why we need to prepare for perimenopause in our 40s. So I'm going to go through each of those 5 reasons and a little bit deeper into each of those reasons as well. So the first reason was the hormonal changes of perimenopause can start at 35 and it can take up to 12 years. So everyone is different through this. And menopause is reached once we've not had a period for a whole year. So we can actually go through stages where we don't have a period for 8 months or 9 months or 10 months. But it's actually once it's been a full year, that's when we're considered in menopause. So just like puberty, there's a lot of hormonal changes, and it takes a number of years to go through those changes. So some can start as young as 35. 1 in 100 women will reach menopause before the age of 40. So it's definitely something that, if you're noticing changes within your cycle and within other things, that it is something to be aware of. Our brains are going through big adjustments, and our hormones are going through big adjustments, just like through puberty. Again, the brains were going through massive adjustments, and so too will hormones. So it just takes a little time for those things to finalize and to run its course. There's no kind of speeding it up or slowing it down. It will do what the body has to do. So the number 2 reason was it's not just hot flushes and skipped periods. So perimenopause can bring on a lot of other what people refer as symptoms, but perimenopause and menopause is not a disease, so it's not something that needs to be looked at like something's wrong with us and need to be fixed. So it can bring on anxiety, weight gain, brain fog, insomnia, just to name a few of the many things that women experience during that time. But it's not a one size fits all. So knowing the what, why, and how it's happening for you means that you can best advocate for your own health in all aspects. So when you layer in things like your lifestyle, if you've had any abuse, if you've had any trauma, if you've got children, all of those things will affect us all differently. So, there's never going to be one thing that can help everyone to work through this. We all need to be looking at ourselves individually and finding out what it is for ourselves. So our bodies know us best. And our bodies will tell us when something's up. So not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, it will give you signs. And we need to relearn how to listen to those signs. And we've kind of been, from a very young age, trained out of listening to our bodies. And if you think about the 12 years of school most of us did, and then working in certain places, we were told when we could eat, when we could go to the toilet, when we had to wake up, all these things that probably went against what our own bodies needed. We didn't eat when we were hungry, we ate when we were told. And if we weren't hungry then, and we didn't eat when we did get hungry, we couldn't eat because it wasn't eating time. So we've had many years of training our body to not, or training ourselves not to listen to our needs of our bodies and to go with what is being told of us. So we need to come back into our body and relearn how to listen. And much of that can be done through our menstrual cycle, because our menstrual cycle is going to, our period and how our period is, and the length of our menstrual cycle is going to show up a lot of our health. So yeah, it's really, really important that we look at our own body, so then we can advocate for our own health. We can take things to our practitioners to get the best advice because we know ourselves. Now, in our 40s, if we go to the doctor with certain things that we're experiencing, like anxiety or like insomnia or irregular periods, they will come to us with two options, and they will be the pill and antidepressants most of the time. Many times they will say this is just part of what you're going through, you're too young to go on any other hormonal treatments that can be beneficial, and so that's the options. And what those options do is take away our ability to listen to our bodies even more. So we really need to come back into knowing how to listen to our bodies so we can advocate for our own health, including those things that I mentioned before. If you've had abuse, or if you're dealing with trauma, or even if you smoke, or if you how much you exercise, all those things come into it as well. So the number 3 reason for why we need to prepare for perimenopause in our 40s. Hi ladies, hi Amber, how are you going? How are you? So it's as much an emotional, mental, and spiritual transition as it is a physical one. So if you think of the emotional and mental changes you went through at motherhood, you're about to embark on a similar shift. And what life has been asking you to look at and what you haven't dealt with yet will show up now. So if you consider your motherhood journey, so think of the time before you got pregnant, if you're a mother, the time before you got pregnant, through your pregnancy and then into motherhood, no doubt you will say, hi Sasha, no doubt you will say that you felt a lot different after than you did before. And that's for a reason, because we're going through these rites of passage, we're going through these stages of life where we are walking from one stage of our life into another. So this is going to be the same thing. We're going to be letting go of part of us that is ready now to move on. And it's the same with puberty. Before we started our periods, we were different to the teenager we became afterwards. Now, it's not a immediate thing like this. It is a transition, and it's a slow transition, like the seasons, like the leaves shedding the trees shedding their leaves. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow transition, but it does change us. So there's a saying that goes, which is I think an old Indian, Native American Indian saying, that went, at her first bleeding, a woman meets her power. During her bleeding years, she practices it, and at menopause, she becomes it. So they knew that at these times, this is not just a physical thing. This is very much a spiritual and a emotional and mental part of our lives as well. And I have heard also from Indigenous people that their culture talks about when a woman enters menopause, it's because she has become wise enough to hold her blood within. Before, when she would lose her blood, she didn't hold the wisdom that she did when she now holds it. So, so how you were, if you think about that motherhood transition, it will be we're going through a similar transition, and it can be a positive one. So, if you hear about menopause, it's always negative connotations. And it's interesting because I think there's so much negativity put on things that hold a lot of power, and it's been deliberately done that way. So as women heading into menopause, and those who are already through menopause, of which there will be many, many, many of us, there's a lot of power there, a lot of power. And this will be a time too where we need to detox. So I'm not talking just in a physical sense with what we are consuming and what our bodies are holding, and having a juice cleanse and things like that, which will be all great, but I'm also referring to detoxing or letting go of things that no longer help us, no longer serve us, no longer are actually part of who we really are. So I'm talking about belief systems, I'm talking about ways of being, it could even include people, things that don't feel right for us anymore, that we've been holding on to, but also felt like it wasn't the right thing for us. So that is number 3. Number 4, so if you had a tough time around your first period and entering motherhood, it could mean the same for menopause, but it doesn't have to be. So doing this work that I've been doing with my workshops with girls, and also speaking with a lot of women, and the research and learning that I've been doing myself, I 100% believe, and I know that this is all linked. All of our rites of passage are linked, from our birth to our first period, to even our first sexual encounter, to motherhood, whether you become a mother or not. It's that creativity, that birthing of something creative, and then to menopause. All are linked, and they are all rites of passage, and whether or not they are celebrated or supported in any way, they still happen in whatever circumstance it happened for you. So if it wasn't celebrated and what it wasn't honored, that presented to you how you thought of yourself and what you considered yourself to be as a woman throughout that next phase until you reach the next rite of passage. So speaking on my own learnings, so I've done work around my birth, my first period, and my motherhood, and there was one word that came up through all of them, and it was lonely. And I felt really alone during that time. And when I came to that, this is part of why I'm doing this work with perimenopause, because I don't want women to feel alone through this. I want us all to be supported and walking through it together, because I think that it's a really important part of our lives, and we can do this together without feeling lonely. Hey Stace, how you going? So we're talking about the reasons why we need to prepare for perimenopause in our 40s. So I'm up to number 4 of my post that I was doing. So I'm talking about, if you've had a tough time during those first periods and motherhood. So now you may have heard before that there are some Indigenous cultures who don't experience perimenopause and menopause symptoms like we do in the Western culture. Now, I find this really fascinating, because there is, there's quite a couple of things at play here. They're probably not having the same Western processed diet that we have. They're probably not exposed to a lot of the chemicals that we are. So there's already a lot of toxic environmental issues that they're not dealing with that we are. They also probably have very supportive communities. So it's not one family raising the children. It would be very much a village community raising children. So then you've got the aspect of stress not playing such a big part, but also within these cultures, which is really important, they know the importance of a woman's menstrual cycle, and they honour the importance of a woman's menstrual cycle. There's no taboo around periods. There's no taboo around breastfeeding. There's no taboo around menopause. And that really does make a difference to how women go through menopause. We've lived with taboo. We've lived with judgment and negativity and saying we're unclean and all of these things that are judgments and really stick to us like there is something wrong with us as women. And we take that into our last, well, not our last, because death is our last rite of passage, but one of the main rites of passage as a woman. And it really does affect us on a level that we're not prepared for, to be honest. And, I hear from so many women who aren't prepared, and like when their daughters got their period, have said, I didn't expect it to be so soon, or I wasn't really ready for it. And now's the time that I can support you and we can support each other to be ready for this. So there is that sense in those Indigenous cultures that they are really, really supported, and it is like that, holding that power. They know how important the older women are in the community as well. So that's another thing women say, I feel invisible and I feel like I'm worthless, because all of women's importance has been placed on their fertility in more recent decades and millennia, and there hasn't been other factors that have come into the why they are important in culture. So older women are really important in culture, and unfortunately it just hasn't been seen that way. And I do like how Christiane Northrup puts menopause. It is the mother of all wake-up calls. So yeah, we need to expect that if we've not been not listening, because it's not really our fault that society is like this, but it's a chance for us to really step into who we are, which is kind of exciting, really. And lastly, number 5, so we are entering one of the most magical phases of our lives. We shouldn't have to struggle with symptoms or not feel like ourselves anymore, or feel worthless and no longer important in society. We should be revered as the wise women we are. So again, like in those Indigenous cultures, those women are revered as the wise women. And we shouldn't feel worthless, or like I mentioned, because we're not fertile anymore, our days are numbered, we're invisible because we might not look how we want to look. Now, this is where a lot of conditioning comes in. So, most of us have been living under I was going to say spell, but I don't know that that's the right term. Living with a lot of shoulds. You should look a certain way. You should behave a certain way, but don't behave like that, but you can behave like that. But oh no, that's too much. You shouldn't bottle feed. You should only breastfeed. You should, what else? There's many. You should be staying home with your mum. No, you have to work. You can do it all. There's all of these things put on us that make us think that our worth is put on something else. So our worth is how we look. Our worth is how much money we've made. Our worth is whether I can be a working mum and have the dinner on the table. Our worth is put on all these things that we should look like or behave like, and it's exhausting. So, it's no wonder that we get to this age and we have all these things come up, because we've been people pleasing for the past 20 or 30 years, and we've had enough. And hormonally speaking, that ends abruptly. So when estrogen drops, which is the last phase of our perimenopause, so estrogen will finally drop, and that's when we will stop having periods. So estrogen is the hormone of accommodation. So when we have these spikes of estrogen, so if we're thinking in our menstrual cycle, the first half of our cycle, we're pumped with estrogen. We've got a lot of estrogen. That's when we're the most kind of nurturing for our families. We feel like we can do it all, particularly around ovulation. And once that estrogen drops towards the end of our cycle, that's when we kind of get enough of things. So we get sick of all the mess in the house, and this is when, if anyone suffers from PMS, at times you've just had enough of doing things for everyone else that they should be able to do themselves. So during menopause, that gets to an all-time low, and the estrogen, that hormone of accommodation, is no longer there. Why should we be doing things for everyone else? Why should we be looking a certain way for someone else? So there's a lot of, when we've been putting our worth on things that are outside of us, it's really going to come and hit us in the face. So we need to relearn how to self-validate and self-love and accept ourselves for who we are at that time, with pure love and forgiveness. And I think this is a lot about the work that I'm going to be doing, is a lot of self-forgiveness, a lot of self-acceptance, and a lot of understanding about where we are and where we're going to be. So we've been under all this programming also regarding what how to look at periods, and all this taboo around periods and taboo around menopause and so forth. So so it doesn't have to be like that, but the problem is we've had no one to show us, and many of us have looked at our mothers and either recall them having a really, really hard time, or don't really recall much of it, but parts of things. And if we ask them, they might say it was it was really hard, but because they didn't have someone to show them how it is either. So that's where I feel like also, by us going into this with preparedness and with loving understanding, knowing that there will be a grieving process as well, because we will be letting go a part of us that is no longer, and that's just part of it. But knowing that is really important. And also, we will be talking about detoxing. Part of our brain goes through a massive pruning, like in the teen years as well. So there will be times when we feel like our brain's not coping with things, and we're forgetful, and there's a lot of brain fog. But that's just part of the process as well. But so doing all this work and having this preparedness is going to then show our children, particularly our daughters, that this also is a wonderful process. Yes, it might be hard. Yes, there might be tough things that we have to deal with, like going through that motherhood process, and like what they're going through with their first few years of periods. But if we look at that mother, and if you look at that teen and how much they've grown and how much wisdom they've come out of that little phase, knowing that we will be the same, we will come through this with a lot more wisdom and a lot more hopefully a lot more love and gratitude for ourselves, and just knowing ourselves in a better way as well. So yeah, I think that's a really important piece to show our daughters that this is not the end. This is not it's not all downhill from here. That's my aim anyway, to show them that I can become older and grayer, so they're noticing my greys and saying, you should dye your hair, but no, I shouldn't. I'm not playing that game. So we, to show them that this is and can be a wonderful, wonderful time of life, and I intend to be the wise grandmother, hopefully great-grandmother, to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And for me, that's a really big one for me, really important to show them that this is how it can be. So talking about that, I want to just quickly talk also about Awakening Through Perimenopause, which is the course that's starting next Tuesday. So it's going to be a 4-month course. So we will go through 4 moon cycles and 4 cycles together. And we'll be meeting on or around the new moon each month, starting on the 2nd of March and finishing on the new moon on the 29th of June. So there'll be 5 Zoom meetups that we do on around each new moon. And then there'll be video courses and outlines for you to work through. So this will go into the physical side of perimenopause and what to look out for and how to teach ourselves to come back into and listen to our own selves again, to advocate for our own health. But then it will also go into a lot of healing, inner child work, looking at our past stories, giving ourselves a lot of self-love, self-forgiveness, a lot of body work. And I'm also got some guest speakers coming on for some of the Zoom calls as well. So I'm looking at a abdominal massage therapist to teach us some of our own abdominal massage work, which will be really important. Looking at having a stylist on, so as our body changes and things changes, we can still feel confident in how we look by dressing in a way that makes us feel wonderful, which I think at this point in our lives is really, really important. And looking at a couple of other speakers too, which are going to be really just nourishing, supportive ways of caring for ourselves. So as well as that, there'll be other online ways of communicating. So we have a private Facebook group that will be in touch really, really regularly. There'll be also one-on-ones with each of the course people throughout the months. So it's it'll be a slow but really in-depth, deep, almost like a coming home. Now I know that there will be parts that will be uncomfortable, and sometimes there will be maybe even some resistance to this kind of work. And I know that because I've had to do the work as well, and it can be really hard, and it can be really emotional, and sometimes you might not want to show up. And I'm just getting emotional just thinking about some of it, but it's the work that I've done to be able to share this kind of work with others, which is why I know it's so important for healing, and it's work that I've done to stop the cycle from being passed on to my daughters about shame and about taboo and about our bodies. So I know this is really, really important. And, even doing things like this, I find this is not comfortable for me. If you know me, I'm the type of person who stands back in a group, is not the first to be outspoken, will observe and listen more than I speak, and will take the limelight. So, I am stepping out of my comfort zone by doing this, but I'm doing it because I know just how important this work is. So, we start on the 2nd of June. Start on the 2nd of March, which is next week. So if you're interested, you can go into the link in my bio, and you can find some more information there. If you have any questions, just sing out and ask me any questions that you may have. And I really look forward to jumping in this work, because I know women are feeling so alone in their 40s and going through these changes and going, what the hell. And I want to be there to walk beside you while you're doing it, because it's okay to feel like that, but it doesn't mean we have to feel like that forever, and we can feel a lot more supported and know that we're not doing this alone. So so that's the program, and I'm so excited about doing this work. So if you have any questions, sing out, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.